Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. And this week we're going to talk about quite a big topic, a news story that broke a couple of weeks ago within the gaming community, specifically all about gaming accessibility, and an advocate or a prominent advocate within that community. And the news, essentially, that they had been faking their identity, or someone had been faking several advocates' identities. We'll delve into what all that means in a moment. But yes, just a trigger warning, I suppose, for coercive and controlling behaviour and the using of identities that are not your own for financial gain and other purposes. So, as you can probably tell from that trigger warning, it's quite a big topic. So what I want to do is try and kind of give an overview of the news that broke on IGN by a writer. Let's see if I can try and... I would recommend, if anyone hasn't read the article, we will link it in the episode description, and you can all go and read it for yourselves, because it really is worth a read. It's a very long article, but it was written by Grant Stoner, who is a disabled journalist covering accessibility and the disabled perspective in video games. When not writing, he's usually screaming about Pokemon or his cat Goomba on Twitter, which is the IGN's own description of the author of the article. So it was published on IGN a couple of weeks ago now, and news broke. It was about a prominent accessibility advocate who worked with studios and inspired change, but never actually existed. So this person allegedly passed away in 2019. Her name was Susan Banks, and there's evidence now in this article that she might never have existed. So if I delve into it a little bit more, essentially, it starts off by explaining who Susan Banks was to the community at large, and what she did within the community. So let me see in my notes. So Banks, who allegedly died on the 4th of March 2019, was self-described in her Twitter bio as deaf, Muslim, queer, disabled, gamer nerd. And she never worked alone within the accessibility space in gaming. And there's a connection between all of these. There's at least 3 or 4 different identities that all link back to this one individual, the perpetrator of these, essentially what are crimes. I don't know, we'll follow up about what the future of this will be after we've gone through the article, but it's a person called Cody Craven, who, as far as I can make out, is a non-disabled white man. I don't know anything other than that. I have tried to research him, but I think his internet presence has been removed following the publication of this article. So Cody Craven, who originally hired Susan Banks to walk, actually that's the other way around. It was Cody Craven who was hired to walk Susan Banks's dog, according to his accounts to other people. So Craven announced shortly after this introduction that the two had entered a romantic relationship. And this is, again, another worrying aspect of this story, is that all these identities had romantic links to Craven in some way, or were, as he purported, his partners. So Craven claimed many times that Banks would have been hospitalised or going through some periods of ill health, and essentially used those to manipulate others into supporting her causes, which were tied obviously to his own if he was kind of using her as leverage within that space. So essentially he was using this created identity, Susan Banks, to make moves within the field of gaming accessibility to represent identities that he did not hold himself, to advocate for better accessibility within gaming. And basically it goes into detail about the types of things that he would account to people, about her saying that certain trips to hospital led to her having a leg amputated and then a second leg in an accident. And then when they contacted the hospital said there was no record of this person existing. Craven allegedly received many gifts and constant praise and attention every time he would post about Banks's ailments or recoveries. So again, using those to garner support and sympathy. And Banks, he reported that she died on the 4th of March 2019, and from that there was this outpouring of grief and support within the community, and a lot of the community, particularly the deaf community, rely on online spaces to communicate and to build up a network online, because a lot of other formats aren't really accessible. So again, that's an interesting aspect to this. There were many quotes from a lot of prominent people within the industry. Her accounts were involved in the creation of Can I Play That?, which is, I think, a site that we've referenced previously on the pod, which is all about kind of a database of games that have accessibility features. So it lists which games are accessible to certain types of impairments. So essentially he was using all these identities to garner support and backing and kind of cement his own place through his partnership with her within that space, if that's making sense. It's all a lot to kind of process, I know. But essentially after she allegedly died, just trying to get to this because it's at least halfway through the article, they set up a posthumous award for the Gaming Accessibility Awards, all to do with advocacy. So it was the Susan Banks Advocacy Award that was set up in her name. That name has now been removed from that award, which is understandable, of course. But there was a GoFundMe page, all sorts of different things as well. But it's not just Banks's identity that Coty was using, essentially. He came up with another 2 or 3 identities following that. So since Banks's death, he's posted about 2 similar romantic relationships with fellow games accessibility advocates. You'll forgive me for mispronouncing these if I'm pronouncing them wrong. Toby Hamid and Damaris Deb Burrell Vaughan, and both have also had their existence questioned. He also published a post in 2023, this is several years after creating these identities, about a 96-year-old woman named Bess, who he claimed was Vaughan's mother. And roughly 1 month later, Craven updated his social media to explain to others that Bess fell in love with gaming, especially Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, showing a screenshot from supposed conversation detailing the elderly woman's fascination with playing the game. So the post got a bunch of likes and reshares and views, and several hours later, Craven shared an essay published on Crossplay about playing Breath of the Wild with Bess. So he's writing on using these identities in his written work. He's used those identities also to write articles and get paid for them as well. And the article essentially rounds off by saying that for approximately 10 years, the gaming industry has consistently supported Craven and his 3 partners. From awards to recognition to funds shared for alleged partners, Craven has cemented himself as an authority within the accessibility space. Yet no evidence proves their existence. And for a community that consists of numerous marginalised identities, losing trust in prominent figures because of alleged lies is harmful to the overall support and acceptance of these groups in games. And that's how it kind of rounds off. Obviously, there's a lot more detail in the article, so if you haven't read it, I would urge you to go on and read it. And you'll get some idea of exactly how he orchestrated all of this. But I just want to come
What's
to
the title of the article?
Oh, actually, yes, I haven't mentioned that. It is. I did say somewhere. I'll scroll right back to the top. So the article is entitled A Prominent Accessibility Advocate Worked with Studios and Inspired Change, but she never actually existed. And it's on IGN's website now in their news section. It was published on the 25th of August and updated. Oh, sorry, that's when it was last updated. Originally published on 23rd of August. So, yeah. So I wanted to come to you both to kind of get your reaction to this news and just kind of how you've been sort of processing it and what your takes are from it, really. So, Jem, if I come to you.
This is like a really multi-layered, complicated story that is it's a total psychodrama, really. Yeah. I think first that what I would like to say is that we don't know whether these people are real or not. And so I think it's important to say if they are real, then obviously there's quite a lot of challenging stuff going on here for the people involved. However, I think that it seems very unlikely that any of the three women that Coty Craven is discussing and using are actually genuine people. So I think it's to me, there are bits of the story that just clearly just don't add up. There was a really interesting bit where somebody from Able Gamers, it was a contact that the author had spoken to from Able Gamers, who had been a little bit suspicious about what was going on and had actually employed a private investigator to see, and they came back and said that they couldn't find any evidence that Susan Banks existed. However, what was really interesting is that in the article, IGN says, we've seen the receipt, so we know that this person was hired for that. But they didn't say that they'd seen or spoken to the investigator or seen the response. So I feel like that isn't necessarily evidential, but they said that they couldn't find any evidence that this Susan existed. But what I found really sort of shocking from that is that it was then years later that that anyone did anything about it. That that this person had been worried enough that they'd employed a private investigator who'd come back and confirm their concerns, and yet they'd not then gone on to challenge Coty or Susan or anyone. So that was one thing. It's a very complicated and convoluted story. Situation. But when I say story, I'm not suggesting that I don't believe the IGN's version of this of events actually. But what really struck me is that this is a horrendous example of intersectional misogyny. I mean, it could not be a sort of more. It could not be a better example, really, of how abusive somebody can be. And this man, from what I read, from how I understand this story, is that this man has used fake IDs of women with considerable disabilities, with racial and ethnic and sexual minority backgrounds, and he has then kind of effectively profited off the back of their stories. So it's extremely problematic. It's very sexist, very misogynistic, very racist, and ableist, and very abusive. And yeah, I have a huge amount of trouble with it. I think it feels to me like I would be investigating the potential of Munchausen syndrome by proxy here, because that's the other potential, that this guy is just really mentally unwell, where it's a very rare case scenario where people make either themselves ill or other people ill to benefit in some way from that process. So they might like the attention that they get by being the partner of somebody who's always ill, or something like that. So he was obviously gaining gifts and money from this and celebrity. However, I do also want to say, on the flip side of it, my understanding is that these people all did, write articles and promote issues that needed, writing and promoting. So if they are fictional, then, it's a shame that Coty felt that he had to create these personas, these avatars, in order to be able to express this information and get that out there and get that to the right people. And I would be really fascinated to know, what was going on in his mind. What was he trying? Was he just trying to achieve some kind of celebrity and fame, or was he also trying to do good in a kind of twisted, messed up way? I mean, it's a bonkers story. And I think it has so many factors.
It does. Certainly I'm still sort of trying to process it now, revisiting it for the pod. Being a disabled woman myself, I feel like there's so many layers to this, because obviously, I don't know if I mentioned on the pod, as part of my day job, I talk about ableism in society and how that manifests and disabled people's value in society. And there's so many layers to this. I've not quite experienced or seen examples of this kind of ableism in actuality until now. But it is like you say, there are kind of two sides to it. It's almost raises the question of how, from Coty's perspective, if he felt he had to come up with these intersectional personas to be able to have the kind of lived experience to speak on accessibility issues, what does that say about the community as a whole, and perhaps some gatekeeping that might be going on there? I certainly know that the organisation I work for prides itself and grounds itself on being disabled led and having that lived experience through every level of the organisation. And it's key to what we do, is having that lived experience. No one else can talk about disability apart from disabled people with any particular authority. And even then, we're not going to cover all of disabled people. We can only talk about our own experience. But there is a sort of level of gatekeeping. I don't know if I want to call it gatekeeping. But if you know that someone is, for example, giving a training session on disability and equality and things, but they're not actually disabled compared to someone who is, then I'm always going to be more trusting of the person who is disabled delivering it, because you can't compare to the lived experience. But I think what's so interesting in this case is that there are so many intersections for each of these people. It's almost raising, I think it's interesting. We always talk about a lot on the pod about wokeness and the plague that is the anti-woke brigade, and they're always complaining about DEI and things being too woke and oh well, that's just ticking a box. It's almost ticked too many boxes, isn't it? And so you can see people from that side going, well, how can we trust anyone who says they're X, Y, and Z? Because this person's been faking it all this time. There's such an issue with trust already in the disability community. Disabled people aren't believed. Their experiences aren't believed. So often because many conditions and disabilities aren't visible. And we're always being asked to prove ourselves to be able to get access to things in the same way. Yeah, I was just chatting to Matt beforehand about going to see a band I like at a gig, and to get accessible tickets for that, I need to prove I have a certain level of disabilities. Like within the benefit system, I need to send them my PIP letter to prove that I can have access to wheelchair seating. So there's a constant need to prove ourselves within like day-to-day interactions, and it just is going to raise up so many issues around trust and
that comes
perceptions and things.
Sorry, I was just wanted to say that comes hand in hand with this idea that you're getting a benefit for your accessible seating. And I think that is, I mean, that was exactly the feeling that I got when I read this article, was how problematic it is for a community that is already having to fight to have a seat at the table, to have a seat that they can access at the table. And I think, it is such a problem that we view the things that are given to people to make
to level the playing field, essentially.
Exactly, as some kind of gift that they should be hugely grateful for and prove themselves. And so something like this, if these people are fake, and even if they're not, because there's question, that does the damage. Exactly. It does the damage anyway. Do
you have thoughts, Matt?
I do. Thank you for.
Go on.
I appreciate the detail you've both gone into, because this is a very complex, long article with lots of different layers, as you've said. The first thing that popped out to me when I skimmed it over for the first time was I'm learning how to develop games myself, and accessibility features are incredibly important to me. Ever since we spoke to Alex's friend Ross, who works at the Royal National Institute of the Blind for blind people, that's where my journey with my awareness of that got started. And the first thing I recognised from this was the Can I Play That website, because they're on there. So when I'm researching the variety of accessibility features that are needed and the different kinds of accessibilities and disabilities, because I have disabilities, but they are invisible. So I have generalized anxiety disorder, I have depression, and I have chronic pain. So those are three things that are, no one can see those. And when disabilities are invisible, it's easy to internalize the message that, you're just making it up, it's not really real, you don't really need anything. But in terms of people pretending to have disabilities, there are, whether it's, so if we take the Paralympics for an example, there are massive conversations about, there's like a hierarchy of disability, right? So if you've got two people who, one person has a leg amputated below the knee doing running, and another one has the leg amputated above the knee, which one of those has an advantage when they're doing running? And there's this idea like if there's disabled where, oh, you should just get on with it, just shut up and get on with it, you'll be fine. And then there's disabled where you can't get on with it and you do need help. And it feels like the people who are in power, who are in charge of this process, resent disabled people. They think they're drains on society, or they're lazy, or whatever. And so from that perspective, there's the pretending to be disabled part, which has a different impact to me because my disabilities are, and the chronic pain is rooted in my depression and anxiety, which is a complete mindfuck. The pain it's a physical manifestation of my mental illnesses. Whereas if it's say cerebral palsy, which is a physical disability that is rooted in like the body itself, that no amount of positive thinking and therapy can unlike cerebral palsy someone, because it's a different kind of thing. So if someone pretends to have anxiety and depression and chronic pain, that doesn't impact me. Whereas I can imagine, from the way you're describing it, someone pretending to have a different kind of disability has more of an impact on them. But the thing that sort of rises to the top of everything in this specific scenario is the can I play that website, because looking at that is the most comprehensive. They don't just do reviews, accessibility reviews. They have documents for different kinds of accessibility, for different people with different kinds of disabilities, the list of accessibility features that they require to play things. And it is exhaustive. I made a spreadsheet of all of it, and there are 133 different accessibility features.
Wow.
And I look at it, and I look at the only 2 games that have properly gone all out with them, which is The Last of Us Part 2 and God of War Ragnarok. And you can go through this checklist and you see all of those things on it. So, and it's a lot. Most of these things are relatively simple for a professional game developer to do. I've got a rough idea of the concept of them. And so it's that I wonder how much this person had an impact on creating this database. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is the holy grail of accessibility in games. And so it's complicated, because you wonder like what had to happen to get to this holy grail. And so it's very complex. And
definitely is.
Yeah, it's interesting for us to talk about. Yeah,
I know that the article mentioned Coty was also behind creating a database of gaming triggers, or triggers in games. So like a trigger list of like, this game has this in it, or whatever else. So watch out. So it was a really useful resource for a lot of people, and a lot of people volunteered their time to add trigger warnings into the spreadsheet, and that's completely gone now, as far as I understand it. So I think he must have removed it entirely. So that's possibly hundreds to thousands of volunteer hours of work from people who are committed to making games more accessible is just gone now. So again,
there is also
it's complicated and complex, but yeah.
When it comes to, this is why, say, in union organising, for example, it's always about the people, and putting people up on pedestals is not a sustainable thing. I think that pedestal people, you do need them at certain points. I don't think that, I believe wholeheartedly that union organising that's the only way we're gonna get the places that we want to go in terms of society. But it's not enough to... You need to find those pedestal people. But you can never only have one. You can never worship them. They need to be people that just get you over the finish line, that give that extra bit of edge to it. And from reading this article, it sounds like this allegedly false person was kind of that to a certain extent. But so, yeah, it comes down to multiple points of failure. So if this one person was the beaconhead of all of it, and then when they go away, everything falls apart, that's a really bad thing. But so I'd never heard of them. I'm not part of that, like, general, like, gaming, like, disabled gaming community in a way that it sounds like a lot of people were in this article. So I don't know the personal impact on the disabled people who cared about this person has been, because there's the personal impact on people being upset that someone's apparently died that they cared about. There's also the financial aspect and the how much money did they gain as a result of this deception. And then there's the positive impact it had. And we have to... It's a grey topic. And yeah, so it's so many different angles to come at it from.
Definitely.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.